Alright, let's get our hands sticky with some white stuff. PVA glue. Alright, it's time to mount that front deflector plate. Now, this can be a little bit tricky to do as we've also got a large surface which we need to adhere to. Thankfully, PVA is nice and clingy. So what we'll do is we'll just get a bead going around the outside. Doesn't need to be too thick, but it definitely needs to make contact with the hull all the way around. Doesn't matter too much if it runs a little bit, as it is currently doing down my finger. Yeah. Now, nice and quick, slot it in place. Nice and quick, he said. Here we go. Make sure we clean up any residual. What I will do is just using a spatula, because there's that little bit of clearance at the bottom, I'm just going to carefully load some PVA in at the base. There's a bit of filler to make sure it's actually making contact with the bottom. With that done and dry, I'm going to mount in the 555 timer. This is easy enough. So the timer itself is going to sit vaguely about there in the middle of the hole, just shy of this line caused by where the phaser bank is on the other side. Because why not? Oop. So first things first, we're going to feed these wires through the holes that we drilled way back when. With that done, you can see how these spades are going to work. So all I need to do is get it into the right sort of position, get rid of some of this slack in the wires. And it's practically being held in place by the wires itself, but of course I'm not going to just leave that as is. Get my good old PVA and spatula. And I'm sure you can guess what happens now. I'm going to go ahead, in fact I'm going to flip this around this way, flip the board up, splooge out a load of PVA, and then splodge, grab the spatula, and just sort of splodge it up into the board. Now, to make sure that this holds nice and steady, I'm going to have a fight with my stuff. What the hell? There it is. To make sure that it holds nice and steady, I will get some masking tape. And just put a broad piece that just spans all the way from top to bottom. It's not, going to apply much in the way of pressure, it's just going to make sure that that board is being held down in place whilst the glue dries. Alright, the next step that we need is an internal island which will hold the white LED tape. Now the trick with this is it needs to be a particular shape so that the LEDs will shine toward the rear and the sides, but not the front. So I'm making this cone shape. I'm just using a Tamiya pot of paint as my start. I have 9 LEDs in this section, which is 3 sections. And I'm just using the length of that to determine how large the cone should be. Now this is just nice thick craft foam. It's nice rigid polystyrene type stuff. And I'll just use this nice big knife and cut it down to size, starting with the straight bits. Then to make the rounded end, we just start taking off chunks and slithers until we are happy that we have the shape we want. And I'll just get my LED tape, give that a look. That should work nicely. As you can see, the LEDs will shine off to the sides and a little bit forward without directly beaming forward toward where the deflector dish will be. And of course they'll go right back into the aft section. The aft section will have a secondary piece of white LED just for those rear windows above the nacelle section. To finish this piece, I'm just going to take some sandpaper and just sand it down. It's not necessary, but it should mean that the LED tape will stick to it nicely. Inside the engineering hull, this island will sit about here at the edge of the circuit board that we put in, and it may actually need to sit a little bit higher, but we can do that simply by putting some foam feet onto the bottom. We need to raise the current up by about ½ centimetre, so let's take this offcut that we just made and cutting it nice and straight. I'm just going to create a wedge which we will cut to length about there, and we'll just glue that onto the bottom with some PVA, and once that's inside the hull it should sit nice and proud. Yeah, it's much better. The trick is that it doesn't want to be on the same level as the two major windows, but just on this lip between the two levels, bearing in mind that the LED tape will be along the top of this. The other thing that this platform will provide us is a location for the engineering hull circuit board. I'll have a piece of PCB on top of here which will have all of the deflector, this internal bit and the rear light going to it, and then from there to the central 555, just to keep things simple and compartmentalized. Hopefully this step is fairly self-explanatory. Take some PVA, glob a nice amount, and then just plop it on. It's not terribly important, just making sure that we get the surface coverage. Everything else doesn't really matter. That'll have to do it for this episode. It's a difficult balance. I want to show you all the steps, but I don't want to bore you with the stuff you've seen before. So, until next episode where there should be more cutting and PVAing, I'm Raven, and that's all from the desk.